This is Gary Kavanagh, and you are listening to Gript's weekly-ish review of our top stories. John McGurk wrote on the frankly bizarre statement released by President Higgins in the wake of the recent massacre of up to 50 churchgoers in Nigeria. The president's statement, while condemning the attack, was largely concerned with the impact of climate change on the most vulnerable. This is despite the fact that the motives behind the attack have not been confirmed, and there does not seem to be any direct link from climate change to the attack. To be honest, when I read the statement initially, I had absolutely no idea what Higgins was trying to say. I initially thought he meant the massacred churchgoers were amongst the foremost victims of the consequences of climate change. Then I thought maybe he was saying the killers were victims of climate change. And eventually I just switched to assuming Higgins just really wanted to talk about climate change, and the massacre was more of a side note than the main point of the statement. Matt Tracy writes on a fracas at the recent AGM of the National Women's Council of Ireland, or the NWCI. A number of women say they were denied access to the AGM as they disagree with the NWCI's stance on transgenderism. Protesters from the feminist group The Countess gathered outside the event holding signs saying, "You do not speak for us," and "Men are not women." Senator Sharon Keoghan also attended the event, saying that the NWCI did not represent women and that the organisation needs to be defunded. Given that the NWCI has previously signed onto a letter which called for those who disagreed with the NWCI's policy on transgenderism to be stripped of legitimate political representation, the women claiming the NWCI doesn't represent them would seem to have a point. John McGurk wrote about Trócaire being given a rap across the knuckle by the charities regulator after the charity launched campaigns about Israel and Palestine. The regulator wrote to Trócaire, which is meant to be combating poverty and injustice in the developing world, to remind them that any future political activity must directly support and advance Trócaire's stated charitable purposes. It's unclear why these particular campaigns caught the regulator's eye, although it's understood several complaints were lodged with the regulator about the campaigns, when Trócaire has been engaging in endless campaigning for a variety of popular left-wing causes for years. John questions if Trócaire has become more of a standard left-wing lobbying NGO than a Catholic charity, and argues that the organisation is now little more than a front for the NGO establishment to extract cash from Catholics. A new Scottish study has found that the introduction of minimum prices for alcohol had no impact on how much alcoholics drank. The study from Public Health Scotland found that alcoholics just spent less money on food, heating, and other household essentials. The study found some evidence that alcoholics had changed from drinking high-strength ciders and beers to drinking spirits, and the study also found less robust evidence that the changes in drinking patterns caused by the introduction of minimum prices had led to an increase in perceived risks of intimate partner violence. More bluntly, people interviewed for the study who lived with or had experience with alcoholism were concerned that the increased financial pressure caused by the increase in prices, combined with the changeover to spirits, meant that alcoholics were becoming more likely to engage in violence against their partners or children. Ireland introduced a policy largely modelled on Scotland's in January of this year. We asked the Department of Health if they had any comment on the study and if they were confident that the Irish policy would avoid the negative impacts we now know have been seen in Scotland, but the department has yet to respond to our questions.